The Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing to both listen to the testimony of Olympic gymnasts who had been victims of the sexual misconduct of USA gymnast Dr. Larry Nassar, and also the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray. Now, why is the FBI involved in this? Well, it turns out that after several Olympians had told FBI officials about what Larry Nassar had done to them, they didn't take any action. In some cases, it took 17 months for them to even investigate the claims. The first half of Wednesday's hearing featured emotional testimony by 4 elite gymnasts: Simone Biles, Michaela Maroney, Ali Reisman, and also Maggie Nichols, who said Nassar sexually abused them under the guise of medical treatment during his time as a USA gymnastics doctor. We have a video showing you some of their testimony. Let's take a quick look at that.
Being here today is taking everything I have.
Tearfully opening up on Capitol Hill about the abuse they faced by former team doctor Larry Nassar.
To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar. And I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
Olympian Simone Biles was one of 4 athletes who painstakingly described being molested by Nassar while competing at the highest level.
I was naked, completely alone, with him on top of me, molesting me for hours.
Gold medalist Michaela Maroney says when she told an FBI investigator what happened, she was met with silence.
After that minute of silence, he asked, "Is that all?" Those words in itself was one of the worst moments of this entire process for me.
Her case was one of the first to be referred to the FBI in July 2015, but the Bureau failed to properly investigate, according to an internal Justice Department report, waiting more than a year before opening a formal probe. By then, approximately 70 other young athletes had been assaulted by Nassar, who was later convicted.
The FBI and others within both USAG and USOPC knew that Nassar molested children and did nothing to restrict his access.
No, it's absolutely disgusting. I want to give you guys more details about what the women testified about. Maroney recalled speaking with the FBI in the summer of 2015 and providing extreme detail about Nassar's abuse during a nearly 3-hour phone interview. So she's reliving this in a 3-hour-long phone interview. But the Bureau failed to proceed with an investigation into his alleged misconduct until more than a year later, as revealed by a blistering Inspector General's report in July. Maroney said that her interview with the Bureau was not even documented until 17 months later, and she accused the FBI of making entirely false claims about what she told them, which you can expect if they're not gonna document it after that lengthy phone interview happens, right? If they're gonna wait 17 months to document it, of course they're gonna get what she said to them wrong. And she was livid about it. I was watching the hearing as it was happening live, and it was absolutely heartbreaking because here is an intelligence agency, a law enforcement agency on a federal level that's supposed to be keeping Americans safe. And in this case, I mean, Cenk, you mentioned earlier, you don't know if it's negligence or if it was a cover-up. I don't know how it could be anything other than a cover-up, to be honest with you. How do you hear this kind of testimony? How do you hear these types of cases and just sit on it for 17 months?
Right, so I don't know, and there's one thing I think they should further investigate, which the Inspector General has asked them to do, I believe. So let me explain. So there's 2 possibilities. The possibility that's lower, less likely, as Anna points out, is, and this does happen from time to time in all places of work, including the FBI. People are of extreme laziness, and they just take a report and they're like, "Oh, it's going to be hard to do this case, and it involves powerful people. Well, I'll just shelve it," right? And you think, how could be that callous? You'd be shocked. I mean, there's like police that don't go and help people who are being killed, and we can go on and on. Doctors who do terrible things. So there's craziness and laziness in the world. So that's a possibility. But it does appear that a higher likelihood is this person, or two people in particular, chose not to pursue this, which then leads to the bigger question: why? What a weird thing that you hear this harrowing testimony of molestation of young girls and sexual assault, and you think, let me help the guy cover that up. Well, that's a very curious choice. So that makes me think, is there something in your life where that leads you to have sympathy for that guy? So they've been fired, but they should investigate further. And so
there should be criminal charges. I'm just keeping it real. I mean, obstruction of justice in the very least, right? I mean, come on. You're part of a law enforcement agency. You get these types of allegations and you just sit on it? Why? Right? There should be criminal charge. Getting fired is not enough. By the way, there's 2 FBI agents in question. One of them did get fired. The other one retired. The July report by Horowitz's office harshly criticized the supervisory special agent in the FBI's Indianapolis office, now known to be Langman and Jay Abbott. So Langman got fired. Jay Abbott, the agent in charge of the FBI's Indianapolis field office, for bungling the Nassar case and later lying about it, Abbott retired in 2018. So that guy retires, he should face criminal charges. And in regard to Langman, that's Michael Langman. Christopher Wray, during his testimony, made clear that he got fired, but he recently got fired. Not enough.
Right before the hearings. Like that, but to be fair, the Inspector General report came out right before the hearings. I think 2 weeks before. So guys, one of the women who was assaulted was asked on CBS about this. It's harrowing and all that. And so I don't mean to dismiss it as all that. The details are horrific. And so the reporter kept asking, do you trust the system? Do you trust the system? I actually think that that's a really annoying question that misunderstands the situation. Well, it depends on what you mean, the system, right? So we've credited the FBI in the past for breaking up a bunch of domestic terrorist plots. They've actually gotten pretty good at that, and they've foiled a number of big bombings, often from the right wing, but not always from the right wing. And no matter where it comes from, that saves lives, so we give them credit for that. Then you have the Kavanaugh non-investigation, which is an absolute travesty that we talked about earlier in the show. This is an even bigger travesty, and it seemingly inexplicable and ridiculous. So which part of the FBI are we talking about? And then the Inspector General report comes out, and the Inspector General report was great. And by the way, that's also part of the system and holds people accountable, and it did. It said they should be fired, and they were, or at least one of them was fired, as you saw the other one retired earlier. But they said you should pursue criminal charges against them. So that's the own department within the FBI saying our guy was a bad guy and you should charge him.
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying goes a little further. You should look into, the FBI should look into that guy's personal life. Like, and I don't mean like in some weird way and go find traffic tickets on him or unrelated issues. I mean, that is a very curious choice to not investigate such a serious charge about such a horrible situation. And now, guys, the one that is the fact that's most infuriating. Between the time the FBI knew and they investigated, it is estimated that Nassar molested, abused, and assaulted sexually 70 other girls.
Yeah.
And so that it's not, hey, a little delay. It's not, hey, people are human. This is not anywhere near an honest mistake. And so there should be criminal repercussions for those 70 girls and women who had to suffer under Nassar because of what these agents did.
150 women have come forward with sexual misconduct allegations against Larry Nassar, okay? And look, I guess we'll be fair. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, also testified on the same day that the women testified. So let's hear what he had to say, and we'll discuss.
I want to be crystal clear. The actions and inaction of the FBI employees detailed in this report are totally unacceptable. These individuals betrayed the core duty that they have of protecting people. They failed to protect young women and girls from abuse. And the work we do certainly is often complicated and uncertain, and we're never going to be perfect, but the kinds of fundamental errors that were made in this case in 2015 and 16 should never have happened, period. And as long as I'm FBI director, I'm committed to doing everything in my power to make sure they never happen again. The FBI cannot carry out its vital mission of protecting the American people without trust. And in this case, FBI agents, certain FBI agents, broke that trust repeatedly and inexcusably. And to pretend otherwise would be yet one more insult to the survivors.
Listen, that was his statement, but I'm personally not buying it, because it was under FBI Director Christopher Wray's leadership that the FBI conducted a sham investigation into the sexual misconduct allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. They didn't even interview Brett Kavanaugh in that 4-day sham investigation. They didn't interview Dr. Christine Blasey Ford in that sham investigation. They also didn't interview an eyewitness to a sexual misconduct allegation against Kavanaugh. Someone who was credible and came forward and said, hey, I was a witness to Brett Kavanaugh exposing his genitals to another woman. Didn't bother to interview that person. So for Christopher Wray to sit there and say, this is unacceptable, this will not happen under my leadership, not buying it. I want to know why they did a sham investigation into Brett Kavanaugh, who now sits in the United States Supreme Court.
So we say let's be fair all the time because it matters, of course, right? And we have to state that because a lot of news organizations aren't. So when you're looking at Christopher Wray, it's a complicated situation. On the one hand, we've had the good FBI investigations of domestic terrorism, and he was a Trump appointee, but generally stood up for democracy. Not like any sort of brave soldier or anything like that, but at least he didn't let Trump steamroll him on some of the issues. But on Kavanaugh, he was terrible. On the Larry Nassar issue, he was not FBI director at the time. It happened in 2015 and 2016. On the other hand, the FBI seems to have an old boys club attitude where if it's I mean, now we have a pattern of if it's sexual assault, the FBI don't go to them. They don't care. In fact, they'll help in these two very prominent cases, it appears they're helping the perpetrator rather than the victims. And by the way, there should be also fairness in the blame of who was in charge at the time. Tattered Remnant is one of our members, and we do the show with you guys. And they wrote in just to point out this abuse and the failure to investigate it happened under both Obama and Trump.
Yep.
So it was late Obama, and it was all of Trump. But yes, it was those guys, and that culture at the FBI existed under them throughout this entire time.
You know, it seems like whether it's on a federal level or a local level, law enforcement that's supposed to protect Americans, to keep them safe, fails over and over and over again. It's fascinating, it's a common thread. Doesn't matter if it's on a local level or a federal level.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.